Hey you guys, I'm Lisa from theScore eSports, and look who has made it to theScore eSports office. Scarra, welcome.
Hello guys.
I think the first question I want to ask you is, why did you miss your flight yesterday? What happened there?
Okay, honestly, I'm really used to, I have a really bad habit where I get to the airport really late, and it's because when I lived in Texas A&M, they have a very small airport. There's two terminals. It's the smallest possible building that can be considered an airport. And they only have 2 flights to 2 very close airports that go everywhere else. You can never get a one-way trip from that airport. So I would always show up like 15 minutes before my flight time and ask if it's okay, and they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. And so because of that, like, this is an international flight, I'm like, you know what, I'll do due diligence. I arrived 50 minutes early, but I got the time wrong. So I actually arrived like 10 minutes early, and they just rejected me instantly. And I was like, oh. But it's okay, I will.
What was your immediate thought when you're like, oh no, I'm not going to be on this plane?
I mean, it wasn't that bad because I known that I didn't have like super serious obligations till today.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, it's okay. But I felt really bad for Chris because I was like, there's no way I'm missing.
Chris is our director, right? Or our manager?
No, my manager.
Your manager. Because there's a lot of Chris's around here.
I told them there's no way I'm missing the flight. It's exactly at this time, and I got the time wrong, which is.
And then what happened today on your flight, your second flight?
My ticket got forfeited, so I got pushed back to the 8 a.m. one.
Oh my god!
And so I was a little bit late to this interview.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. It's all about the live, But you made it. That's the most important thing. And we want to talk to you about this weekend's matches. It's the NA LCS finals. We made it through the season. Let's talk about the matchup. So in the third place match, we have Immortals and CLG facing off. Finals, C9, TSM. Did you see this coming? Did you see that this is how the season would have ended?
I thought Immortals was going to make finals. I think that
really?
if CLG had been on the opposite side of the bracket, they had a much better chance to make finals as well. So essentially, like, the goal was to dodge TSM until finals. And CLG didn't do that. So they unfortunately had to hit the hardest opponent, and they weren't able to step up.
Actually, question about that. You once did coaching and everything. Do teams actually take into account, playing the bracket that way? Like, I'm not saying, don't say names, but like intentionally losing so that they could get the favorable match? Because I always wonder about that. It's
like they don't think about it until the very last week. And then at the very last week, it's like, shit, we don't want to lose this series, but the goal is to always win, but there's a lot of situations where players go in not taking it fully seriously. And so why I can't say they're sandbagging on purpose is they're not trying.
I didn't want to use the word sandbagging.
Yeah, they're not trying as hard.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this weekend's matches are on 6.15? 6.15, I believe.
I think it should be 6.15 or 6.16.
Okay.
Regardless which one it's on, I think it's a little bit unfortunate because I'd like to see it on the current patch because I think they did a really good job at 6.17. But that's all whatever.
And I just want to clarify, is Aurelion Soul still disabled for these matches?
I don't know because they originally, when the announcement was made, Riot said that Aurelion Soul will be re-enabled by World's patch. However, I don't know if it means he's still banned. And so they haven't made the clarification to the public, from what I understand, and I haven't reached out to CLG to see if it's banned.
Okay, that's interesting. By the way, you guys, if you guys are watching, be sure to send in your questions or comments because throughout the talk, we're going to definitely check in with you guys. Do we have anything right now?
What do you think about that top lane matchup?
Oh, with C9 and TSM, because we're going to get there.
They didn't specify.
We're going to talk about that top lane matchup. Very vague. But let's talk about the third place match first. Okay. So CLG and Immortals. Immortals, this is their second time playing for that third place spot. What do you think of their performance this season, and how did they get here? What did they do wrong? They were so close.
Okay, well, the way I always see Immortals is that their normal season is like, you essentially can't have anything wrong about their normal season. Their overall yearly record this season in series is, I think they're 33-3 or 33, something like that.
They're amazing in the regular
season. Insane 90% win rate. But I always feel like they're a team that are able to overcome, like, they put themselves in bad positions all the time, I feel like, draft-wise. And a lot of times it just, I think their strategy is very one-dimensional. If their top lane and their jungle aren't able to get a lead or aren't able to snowball and control the pace of the game, then they don't really have another way to win the game. However, their top and jungle are so good, especially their jungler, that they consistently go off. But it just feels like I'm actually okay with one-dimensional strategies. If it's a one-dimensional strategy that you're unstoppable at, then who cares if it's one-dimensional if you always win? However, I don't think they're unstoppable. I feel like Huni, especially this split, hasn't been playing very well, and it's cost their team a lot of games.
Go back to that thought where you're like, having a one-dimensional strategy is okay. People don't like that because then when you go against teams like at Worlds, you know, there's one-dimensional strategies never work.
No, that's the thing. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if the one-dimensional strategy is good enough, it will work. However, the quality of the teams that play against each other are just that much different. So it's, for instance, if let's say you could run a strategy like Immortals does against SKT, but have the talent of their roster, it'd still be good.
Yeah.
However, that's usually not the case. It's usually that the other teams are way more well-rounded, so there's less openings to take advantage of your strategy, and so that's why a lot of people look down on one-dimensional strategies. However, I feel like it's really unique because sometimes it caters to the playstyles of certain individuals or certain like teams, and so I don't want all the teams to play the same. So I want teams to, if a team has a strategy where like every game they stumble on top, I think that's completely okay. If they can get it going, then who cares?
But the opposing team really just has to prepare for just, you know, make sure top doesn't snowball. Like, it's that easy to counter,
But like,
it?
the prep, even if they can do that, if they're on like the other side where they have to blind their top laner, and they also get a favorable jungle matchup, like, it's not that easy. It's like you can't dodge a lane anymore with lane swaps, so you're really put in a position where like, they have tools to get ahead, even if you try to stop them, if they're good enough.
Someone asked, what do you think of the mid lane matchup in TSM versus C9?
Ooh, that's a great question. We're going to get there, okay? We're going to answer it. But going back to the third place match, so that was Immortals. Now CLG has made it to the finals twice in the last 2 seasons, right? But this time they're playing the third place match. What do you think of their performance this regular season? And what is it that they're struggling with? Like, why did they not make it to finals again?
I just think usually they're a team that impresses through macro play. And one of the big things that is different than I thought before was that their macro play, however good it is, I thought TSM was a team that's macro play has improved a lot this year. I think the shot callers get a lot of the props for that. I think Bjergsen and Double F have really stepped up and being able to control the team on a macro level and get leads. Like, there are a lot of situations where CLG maybe had to kill lead, but they were losing in gold. And I think that's very unique because usually CLG is the comeback team. Even if you take a lead, like, their macro play allows them to come back. Additionally, I think that Darshan hasn't been playing very well this season. I think really the semifinals was showing of two top laners that were very, very consistent and 2 top laners that weren't very consistent or impactful. And so, yeah.
There's a pretty good question here. On the recent Beyond the Rift, you said that you wouldn't be surprised if there was a roster change for Immortals next year. What role do you think we'll see a swap?
I don't know.
You don't know which role?
I just think that overall, like, their team, I just don't see them staying together. And so
it's like they're working, but they're not working completely.
Yeah,
right?
I think they're just missing something to be able to. It might not even be a roster swap with the players. However, I do think it will be. I think that at some point you do have to evaluate the coaching staff as well for being able to let through. I feel like situations where their drafts just aren't very good.
Potentially like a coach, maybe another coach coming in, helping with draft analysts.
I mean, to be honest, I look at the Immortals and they're fantastic. I mean, you look at like their records and like they're the only league grown team that's been able to rise up to the top 4. Like, a lot of times when people talk about teams that grew up or teams that didn't come in from investors, Immortals somehow gets left out of the equation. Yeah. But they're a team that's VC backed and they're great. They're killing it.
Okay, going back to CLG quickly, you mentioned before about the whole, you know, with the current patch, lane swapping is not a thing as much anymore, and now it's more about standard lanes. How do you think that has impacted CLG in particular? Just because, you know, they're known for their early game lane swaps and their.
I don't think it's super bad, especially because you're given the option to lane swap in 5 minutes, which they tried against TSM.
Yeah.
However, it's just harder for them to pull out some situations because the lane swap when they tried against TSM, the lane swap got red, and then they actually lost their tower first. They lost first tower gold in the game that got remade the first game. And so it's just a different type of macro style. And I don't know if they really fully adjusted, but I think they were one of the first teams that thought about it. I remember talking to or hearing about Tony being like already thinking about the timings that they can lane swap while the patch is coming out. And so I think their coaching staff is really good. It just sucks that Tony's kind of suffered I think vertigo,
right? That's what
and
I heard too.
He's been bedridden for like a week or 2, and I just think that's really bad because like if the head coach is out of commission, like the substitute analyst, which I don't even think is a full-time coach, has to step in.
That's rough. So looking at these two teams, when they go head to head, what do you think are each team's like advantage and how they can overcome the other team?
I think Immortals' advantages is very clear. They're jungle top lane.
Yeah.
Super good. I think Reignover is still one of the best Western junglers. If I had to give any jungler an award for best Western jungler, I would give it to Reignover. I think after that, I've kind of watched a little bit of Trick, but I've heard very good things. Like Trick would get the second place, and then third place gets spread out on a lot of different people. However, I think it's like that level of standard that I consider Reignover's like skill to be at. And so I think that the weird thing is, and I talked about it a little bit before, I think that Darshan's the type of player where he couldn't really push in leads. I thought he really struggled to do that. However, I think he can really hold on against the aggression, so he can like maybe stifle the aggression. And like Smithy has always done a good job at being able to neutralize the other jungler, regardless of their known skill or known talent. At MSI, he did a great job. Throughout the split, he's done a great job. And I think that CLG's macro game is better. They're not going to run to a TSM scenario where their head and kills would be behind the goal. They're going to be, if they fall behind, they can always come back, whereas TSM, not so much. So I always thought, again, that if CLG was on the other side of the bracket against Immortals or C9, CLG would have a better chance than against TSM. And this game, I think it's going to be very, very close. I predict something like a 3-2 or maybe like 3-1, but I give the favor to CLG because I think that they have the ability to make better decisions throughout the series of games.
That's really interesting. Now I want to talk about like the bounce back factor, because the last weekend when they played against obviously their opponents, CLG got like stomped completely by TSM, and then Immortals had a really close matchup against C9, right? How do you think, do teams ever take that into account coming into the next match, being like,
no, they don't care.
It was rough. They don't care. It doesn't affect them.
They shouldn't care. The best teams should just be able to be like, okay, that should happen last week, but it'd be different if they were playing the same team. So if they're playing TSM back to back, they'd be like, oh man, last time was really a lot of stuff happened, like really, really messy stuff happened. Like they could be feeling the pressure. But when it's a different team, it's really easy to just disassociate yourself with the last week because I mean the saying is any given Sunday. So I think any team can win in any situation, and every team has to believe they're the better team to be able to come out on top.
For this matchup, is there a particular person or champion you think will make the most impact in the series?
I think the jungle will make the most impact.
Jungle.
For sure. And I don't know too much about the champion.
People were there was so much talk over the Aurelion Soul ban, you know? Like how that might have affected CLG and their chances.
I think it's terrible because Soul is such a unique pick for CLG. It matches their style very, very well. I think it allows the mid laner to kind of cheat the lane because Soul, regardless how good the opposing laners is, Soul can always outshove to get pressure early. And because of that, he makes the first map play consistently every single game. And so that's why, like, in the Bjergsen matchup, who cares how much better a player Bjergsen is? He could be Faker. But against Soul, it doesn't matter because even if you're the best player in the world, Soul can I want to say cheat the lane, but that's exactly how he does. Like, he's a very, very good early game champion, and then after 2 items, he tends to fall off very hard. However, you can be in situations where you secure the game by the time 2 items hits anyways.
So why is it that CLG has taken to Soul and other teams haven't as much?
It's just who he's picked. It's a pick that requires at least 20 games of practice to be good, and a lot of teams won't want to invest that into a champion, especially when there are other champions out there like Azir or like Syndra. Like there's just champions that may be better suited for a lot of other teams than Soul, and it's a champion that is more like a pocket pick of his. If you thought about Soul, it's like he was the only Soul player in North America for a long period of time.
Well, that's interesting. Are there any questions before we move on to the next match? Anything?
Were there any players that impressed you or disappointed you the most in semifinals?
I think I was disappointed by both top winners that are going to match up in the third place match. Hudi, I thought would be much more consistent, and Darshan, I thought would pressure harder. So both those players kind of disappointed me, so to speak. And none of the other players really stood out or like went too far or too low, in my opinion. I just thought that...
Question about that. It's interesting that it's both the top laners. Do you think it has anything to do with maybe the meta right now and what champions those players are allowed to play? Maybe it's not their style?
Maybe, certainly. However, in this situation, like I can only critique them based on the champion that are the current meta. And so if they can't perform well in the current meta, I have to be like, well, they're not playing well.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I think they're bad top laners. I still think Huni's like number 1 or number 2 in North America. However, it doesn't mean I can't critique his lack of or his poor play in the semifinals.
Yeah, like them on this meta is just not as good. Simple as that. Okay, now let's move on to the finals match, TSM versus Cloud9. We had a couple of lane questions, so let's tackle them right now. Top lane matchup. We have Impact, Haunter. What do you think of that matchup?
I don't know. I think
Oh,
the
okay,
semifinal
then.
match is the match where top laners really went off, like
Yeah.
showed their stuff. And I think that that's not going to be the case for this situation. However, I think that's completely okay. C9 tends to win off their mid lane pressure. Like C9, Jensen is, everyone is like really tells me Jensen's a great player. Like they're really scared of playing against him normally. A lot of the mid laners, except for Bjergsen. And so I think that that's always been their kind of edge. Like he eats all the ganks, but he also creates a lot of pressure because he's just so dominant in the laning phase. And I don't think that top lane will do much. However, I think that it's hard to say because both those two players were performing very well against players who I thought weren't performing very well. So I wasn't able to see like the extent of their hill. I do want to say though, Impact played fantastic. However, he also has to play against the best performing top laner throughout the split. And so I don't think Impact's gonna get much pressure. But the great thing about Impact is that he's such a solid role player. He doesn't need to be a carry. He doesn't need to be a tank. He's very flexible. And even if he gets no resources, he's still going to be very impactful. He's still going to be very impactful.
Pun intended.
Even if he doesn't get much help. And I think that that's always been one of his great strengths.
And what about Haunter on TSM? What kind of role does he play? Like I find like he initiated a lot in some games.
I think he just plays like a very solid, consistent, like low mistake kind of role, and a lot of that time I feel like it's because TSM's players don't have to worry about solo carrying. None of their players have to be like, I have to solo carry this game, because they have teammates that are so good at their respective roles. It's always going to be a combination of people carrying. Very rarely this season in TSM I've ever been like, that guy 9-0 went off. Like I think Bjergsen had a game on Talia where he went 9-1 or something. And for the most part, that doesn't happen. It's like a combination of multiple people just come together and then win the game. And so that's why it's a little bit funny, because when I see Jensen play, I think he has to ride the edge, because if he doesn't create pressure and lock up and put himself in dangerous positions sometimes to get harassed in lane, his team can't win, because they depend on him to create that type of pressure. However, Bjergsen doesn't have to ride the line as nearly as hard, and because of that, there's not as much pressure for him to kind of perform, especially in the laning aspect, because he knows that his team can get leads in multiple different ways, whether it's your top lane or bot side or jungle. Like he has a lot of options, whereas Jensen and C9 in general has to notoriously rely on making sure mid lane just creates a lot of pressure.
So just to summarize, so like TSM, they're so all good that the pressure is kind of equal. Like if one lane fails, they're okay because they can rely on another lane. Whereas Cloud9, they're more dependent on one lane. They're mid lane.
I don't know so much as dependent, but it's more like their style of play is they pressure bot side, they leave Impact alone. So the stat that always gets brought up is that Impact gets the least amount of Rift Heralds of any top laner in North America. And on a team that's going into finals, that's a really weird stat to have, because even against a lower level teams, he just doesn't get that. And as well as that, they don't really contest Dragon that much either. I interviewed Reaper and he said it's because they prefer tempo advantages in a lot of situations instead of Dragon. And so they have very unique ways of playing the game that other teams don't. However, they're very successful with it. Like I said before, I don't think one-dimensional strategies are bad. I think C9 has a fairly not to the extent that Immortals does, but I think C9 has a very specific way that they do things. And when you look at TSM, their team is overall better, well-rounded. However, if C9 can win using their style, I'm not going to say it's bad. I'm just say it's different.
Okay, any questions before we move on? Just want to check in with you guys.
Someone asked if there's going to be good representation in Worlds for NA. Like, what does it look like?
That's a question right there.
I think TSM can get the semis.
Ooh.
Well, I already made the statement. Yeah, I think as long as they dodge with a little bit of luck, if they dodge some Korean teams, yes, I think very easily they can make it to semis. And this is probably the best showing of a North American team in forever. And not even considering TSM, I think the other teams will put up a way better performance than last year.
Here's a random. Well, who do you think are the other two teams to make it to Worlds for NA?
C9 Immortals.
C9 Immortals.
But it's really weird because wait. I want to say it's C9 and COG actually, but I think COG just has so many ways they can get in. You know, if TSM wins, then COG gets in.
Right.
If COG wins, COG also gets in. And so I think I would automatically give it to COG. So and I think also COG has okay to favorable matchups against both C9 and Immortals, and so the toss-up to me is whether or not C9 or Immortals goes. I have to say C9 looks a lot more, just a lot better
Yeah.
They didn't tilt during the series. Like, they beat Immortals, so I have to give them the heads up. And so I think even if they meet in the gauntlet, and it turns out that like TSM wins, COG wins, and C9 versus Immortals is in the gauntlet, I would have to favor C9 in that situation because Immortals hasn't shown any kind of ability to, I feel like, adapt in the long term, and I don't expect any short term changes to impact it. However, it was a really close series, right?
Yeah, it was.
And so it could have easily gone in Immortals' favor.
Okay, let's go back to TSM and Cloud9. Another interesting thing I noticed is that like both teams had a new, I guess, support. Is it support? Yeah, new support. Like Sneaky had to do first Bunny Fufu, and then Smoothie, and then obviously Double Lids came in with Biofrost this season. So when you see these two bottom lanes go against each other, who do you think comes out on top? Who do you think is more?
I think Double Bio wins.
Double Bio?
Yeah, I think that they are laning wise going to be a little bit better. I don't think they have the pure dominance as like other teams' bot lanes. Like for instance, I watched the LPL finals. I think last night. And I watched Uzi and Mata get a 20 CS lead off a lane freeze at level 1, and I was just like, my god, these guys are monsters. They had no jungle pressure. They were able to create such an enormous lead by themselves. They lost that series. They got smashed. But you know, I was still impressed with that. And I don't think that really happens for TSM. There was, I think, 1 or 2 games where they had an enormous CS lead. I think they had one game against Immortals early in the season where they had a 20-25 CS lead against just straight up against their bot lane. However, I don't think it's going to be that bad for C9. Like I think even though C9's laning might be a little bit worse, it's not going to be to the degree where they're going to be able to be eclipsed that hard. Okay. So maybe they're down like 10 CS to where I think that's completely like that's irrelevant almost.
All right, now is there a player or champion that do you think would make the most impact this season? I mean, sorry, this match.
I talked about it a little bit before, but someone brought it to my attention that C9 really doesn't play much Vlad. And I think Vladimir is one of the best champions in the game right now for mid lane, and which is really strange. I don't think he's mechanically demanding. I think Jensen would be great on him because he draws so much pressure, and Vlad it's so easy for Vlad to not only dominate lane, but also dodge ganks because his pool and his summoner spells are going to be running Ghost Flash. And so I think it's really strange that he's played 3 Vlad games the entire season. He's 1 and 2 on Vlad, and they banned Vlad on both sides in the semifinals. And so maybe it's like a bait. Maybe this I want to see him play Vlad in the finals. But if it is like a draft problem, if they just haven't had good results with Vlad, then that could be a champion that becomes like it's essentially TSM gets a free ban because. That's just the case. And a lot of times teams will draw free bans like that. For instance, Immortals will draw like 2,000 Rumble bans. It's actually, I think Huni can legitimately 1v5 with that champion, like he showed. Yeah. And so he will draw a Rumble ban in that series for sure. If it's not triple Rumble ban, I will be very shocked, to be honest. But yeah, I think that Vladimir might be a champion that it may not influence the series because it's banned every game. However, it's something that I can look back to and be like, well, is them not being able to play the champion like a liability? And it might be. So, but if they can win without it, then it doesn't matter. Like I think C9 is so unique. They have got a unique playstyle. I love to see it because I don't want to see these bread and butter cookie cutter teams, right? Yeah. I don't think if they go to Worlds and play like other people's styles, they're going to be able to beat them at their style because the other teams are better at that. I'm glad they've kind of found their own style of play. I don't think they're going to win. But
that leads you to the next question, predictions.
Yeah, I think they're going to get 3-0 or 3-1.
Oh, 3-0?
And I think TSM will 3-1 though. However, I'd love to be wrong. Please prove me wrong. But yeah, I'll give them 3-1 for TSM.
Okay. Any other questions from you guys? You guys have any other questions before we wrap up here?
Biggest flaw of the 2 teams in the finals?
Biggest flaw of the 2 teams in the finals? Flaw.
I think Sven on non-Italy champions against really, really strong carry junglers has shown to be he's shown to be a little bit of a hole against the other team. However, I don't think Meteos is going to be the type of jungler that pressures him because he's like a tank jungler. He plays Rek'Sai Gragas.
Helping Jensen.
And the same thing is true about Sven. I think if they both fit into those styles, Meteos is just really a weird player. Like a lot of times I look at him, I'm just like, he did it. Like he got what he was supposed to off. Yeah. But I don't know how he got there. I don't know how he did it. So, but I'm like really impressed with Medias because this is his first split back. He's performing so well after being like a streamer for so long.
Yeah.
It's just I'm just confused when I watch him sometimes.
Amazed.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, I guess for C9, their liability is. It's like they focus bot side, right? They're the opposite of Immortals, and because of that, if Impact gets in a situation where he gets pressured a lot, like he was able to recover against Immortals because he played like a monster. However, if you're expecting a player to play like literally like the best top lane in the region or in like the hemisphere of the world at the time to be able to win games, I think that's a very, very harsh burden to put on the player. And so let's say the same thing happens, but he like when Hanser gets a lead, similar to Huni's, I don't think Hanser's the type of player to throw that lead. He takes the lead, he creates advantages through that, and he doesn't have to go crazy to make plays to win the game. And in that type of situation, I think it's going to be hard for Impact if the same situation happens where he gets pressured. However, their team isn't able to create any kind of pressure on the opposite side.
So like listening to you say that, it's like there's almost no win-win. Like if Medias goes helps top, bottom lane could edge out. You know, TSM's bottom lane could edge them out. If he goes bottom, Hunter's gonna take control.
I don't necessarily
so
think
TSM's gonna win this season, guys.
I don't necessarily think that's true. Like when I talk of Jensen's skills, I think Jensen's the only mid laner. Laning wise, I've heard people even tell me that Jensen could be slightly better than Bjerg, or at the very least on his level. Bjerg's big thing is that he doesn't have that much pressure to carry the game, and his rotational play from mid lane to help out his other lanes is fantastic. However, Jensen doesn't do that well. Like most of the times, his team has to come mid to get him the lead, and then he does something with it. And so I think C9 has a lot of ways they can win in very unique ways. It's just I think that they're not going to be able to find as big a hole as they did against Immortals against TSM, because TSM is way more rock solid as a team overall.
That's really interesting. Now, you guys, what do you guys think about Scarra saying that Jensen is a better mid laner than Bjergsen? I'm ready.
That's not what I said. Come on.
I'm just kidding. Trying to get Reddit on your
I know. I already caused enough drama.
It's been a crazy week for
Keeping
Scarra.
it kind of low key.
Okay, now I guess we're wrapping up now. Yesterday I asked you guys to send any questions if you had for Scarra, and we actually have a real cool board. Bring in the board, you guys.
Oh.
Ta-da! It's very low budget, guys. Okay, don't judge the board. So everyone who sent in a question, I wrote them up, put them on here. So don't read them.
Okay.
You have to randomly pick one, and I'll read it
I
out.
only have.
Which one? Which one do you like?
12 fans. That's more
You
than
guys.
God. That's fine.
Guys, come on. Next time, step it up.
Okay.
Which one?
Let's go with the middle blue one.
Middle blue one.
Sure.
Oh.
Shortest one. I don't know what that says.
By the way,
I can't read any of this.
It's a mix of really good questions and a mix of really funny questions. And the one you picked, ready?
Yes.
So from Twitter, at the Mighty Croak asked, can Scarra twerk? First question is, have you tried?
I've never tried.
You've never tried.
And I know if I ever do in a public setting, I'm more than likely going to be arrested. Or, and on the medium that I use, Twitch, it actually bans all twerking.
No!
Yes, so twerking will get your channel banned. I think it's actually more serious to be twerking than it is to be like naked on Twitch. Due to some really convoluted situation where I think someone really high up on Twitch got very mad at someone who was doing that. And so from what I understand, like if I try to do that on Twitch, I will get my channel taken down faster than anything else.
Well, there goes my Twitch career, you know. No twerking on Twitch apparently. All right.
One more.
Let's do another one.
Take the middle one.
Everyone's laughing behind there because I made a joke about twerking. See?
the middle pink.
Middle pink is one.
That one or the one above, I don't care.
Let's see. Those are both actually really interesting. Let's do it quickly both, because I actually really like them both. Okay.
It looks like I don't have a choice in this.
No, but you chose both of them, right?
No.
Whatever.
Help me.
So, at OCE Flawless, which champion is only one buff away from being played professionally in the mid lane?
Oh.
Ooh, I like that.
There's actually a lot of champions. But it's really strange to say because it depends on how big the buff is, you know?
That's
so
fair.
when they say like one buff, it's like, well, you talking like one flat second off their abilities, or you talking like base damage goes up by 20 or 30? Like that's a large amount. I think right now...
Or based on how they are right now, they're close to being good and professional.
Oh, goodness.
Or who would you even want to see back in the mid lane? You know, like maybe.
I think they recently buffed Ori. I think if they could help her out a little bit, she might see some play again.
The new buff is her ult is less.
Yes,
right?
her cooldown is less, and so. But the thing is, it's like it might not need a minor buff. It might be like need a decently sized buff, like either a mana cost buff or like a range buff. I think that's really dangerous. So maybe not. Like, maybe like a mana cost buff would be really helpful because when when itemization changed and she couldn't build Grail into Deathcap Void, I think that she of all champions suffered the most on the Grail nerf because she needs at least 2 items to hit the spike rather than 1. And because of that, I think Ori kind of fell out of the meta. Like right now, the optimal build is Tier Morelos. However, I think that she's always such a good champion that maybe if she just had a little bit of mana buffs, that she could come back in full force because she was one of the champions that I thought that was flexible enough to be used in a lot of different situations. But maybe not. You know, maybe I changed my answer. I think
10-minute answer. Never mind. Scrap that one.
I think Corki is actually super good right now.
Corki mid lane.
Yes, and he's like very close to being God. Or maybe not God, but he's very, very close. And I think that, I remember one of the reasons Ori fell out of practice is because a lot of her matchups were poke heavy. And Ori just doesn't have the answers to stuff like Azir or other poke champions. But Corki is one of those poke champions that always did well against Ori. And I think Corki is like essentially 1 or 2 small buffs away from being really, really good. And I think I've seen some Corki here and there, and I'm surprised that it's not being played more. They got played once in LPL.
All right, maybe we'll see more of that. Okay, last question. At Love It Sama, in 5 years, what would you want your legacy to be? That's a deep question, guys.
I don't.
Your legacy. Think about it.
I don't. I don't know, man. Okay, I'm gonna
Your
go.
time at the Story Sports.
Oh God! By then I'll have moved on. I'll be working for ESPN. What's your competitors? Just list them out.
Oh, you don't speak those words around here.
But I think let me talk a little bit about timeline in esports. So in esports, in other industries, timeline is a lot different. So when you talk about long term in other industries, usually long term means 5 to 10 years, and short term means 1 year.
Okay.
But however, in esports, short term means 1 week, and long term means 1 year. So I don't plan out stuff that far in advance. And so, like for instance, if you're trying to become a doctor, you already have a route planned out for 10 years, right? My long term dream is to be a doctor. I'm going to med school. I'll be interning at this place. I'll be yada 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 yada. However, the industry is very volatile and still kind of young. So I don't know what I'm going to do. Like I didn't know I was going to be an interviewer. I didn't know I was going to be a coach till like the weeks of or like the month of. And so it's really hard for me to predict what happens in 5 years. Like in terms of legacy, I want to leave behind. Obviously, I want it to be good, but
of all the things you've done so far, like from this point and back,
yes.
like if there was something you wanted to be remembered by, maybe that could be.
God, I think it's too late for this, but I want to be remembered as like a player who played well. Like, you know, I think having the idea of being remembered as one of the greats, whether it's in the region or in the world, it's always something that I thought I could be really proud of. However, I think that's almost impossible because I wasn't able to make a big enough impact when I played to be able to get that kind of award. So that legacy isn't really possible.
Scarra, you're great to a lot of people.
I don't know what I'm going to be able to leave behind. However, I just hope it makes me and a lot of other people happy.
All right. Final questions? Anything from there? No, we're good? So let's talk about this weekend quickly. This weekend, we're both going to be at the NALCS Finals. What are you going to be doing there?
Being attractive.
Always. Not just this weekend. Always. But let's...
I'm going to be interviewing the players.
Yeah. He's going to be taking care of your post-game interviews.
I mean, to be honest, with her here, I feel like I don't really need to do much because we have already such a talented interviewer.
Oh,
so
shucks.
There's
Scarra.
really no need for me. I can just look pretty and then just watch as she interviews all the time.
Nice try. You're doing work this weekend. And I'm going to be hanging out, hopefully outside, meeting all of you guys. So be sure if you see me, come up and say hi, and hopefully we can chat. You excited for this weekend?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. It was great talking to you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. And next time, we're going to be doing Facebook Live more often. So be sure to always keep, an eye on our Twitter, our Facebook, our socials. Subscribe to us on YouTube. All our good content goes on there. No, wait, that was a jab at the content side, wasn't it? All of our video content. The guys are going to kill me. Anyways, so subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll find all our video content there, okay? See you guys next time.
Bye.